Today we have Dan Trepanier from Articles of Style joining us. Dan, great to catch up with you.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Well, I love to hear your story. I've followed and knew about you as a style blogger, and now I just got my first Articles of Style suit. But I like to start kind of back in like almost where your high school style was and what led you to becoming a stylish, fashionable guy that you are today.
That's a long story, man. High school for me was not about fashion at all. I guess fashion played a large role in that I was an athlete, and even back then, it wasn't the same where basketball was tied to fashion, but it was part of the game. You know, the way you arrived to the arena and your whole kind of like character off the court. So in high school, I was wearing like double XL baggy Rockwear jeans and like Pelly leather jackets and real just like hood streetwear stuff. Because really, ball was life.
So what helps you? What makes the transition from from double and triple XL shirts into suiting?
A lot of things, I think. I quickly after high school, I was recruited to play basketball in college. So when I took my trip to Columbia, I kind of knew I wanted to be in New York. I grew up on a farm, kind of in the middle of nowhere. So on my recruiting visit, I'd never been to a city like that. So I was kind of blown away. So certainly moving to New York was probably was a huge influence. Going to Columbia was also a big influence in that the kind of Ivy League roots were still there. Um, but I don't know, it's kind of a gradual thing, you know. I think a lot of guys in our generation were kind of streetwear heads and sneaker collectors, and that was kind of where the culture was at the moment. And now, it's shifted completely. You didn't want to be known as like a fashionable guy back then. You wanted to be cool, but you didn't really want to be like into fashion. Now I think a lot of those barriers are broken, so you don't have to be afraid to be like really into clothes. So along with that, the styles change too. If you look at like the influencers, for example, what Jay-Z was wearing back when I was playing ball in high school versus what some of these younger hip hop stars are wearing today is completely different, right? It's a lot skinnier, it's a lot more colorful, it's a lot shinier. So I was very much a product of the timing as well, I think, in that way.
I think even just this week, Casey Neistat is relaunching his vlogs, and he's wearing a shirt and a suit every single day. And so you even have that
Casey
kind of thing
Neistat's wearing a suit and tie?
every day. I love seeing it. It looks kind of odd, but I'm very used to it.
That's cool. Yeah,
Do
I
you
like him a lot.
do you remember any of the people that would have inspired you at the time? Were you following any sites? We didn't have Instagram back then, but what got you into blogging?
Blogging at first was kind of just it was like a creative outlet, you know. The backstory is that I was, playing basketball in college. My teammates and I all lived in the same house. So I was like the go-to guy for fashion advice. A lot of our guys didn't come from New York, but we all lived in New York, so it was kind of an intimidating place. So a lot of my friends would say, "Hey, we're going out this weekend. What should I wear?" Or I just got some money for my birthday. What should I buy? I kind of became that guy. And at some point, I was like, guys, I can't come to your rooms every weekend and like dress you up. So I'm just gonna start a website and write this stuff down for you. And it was really, really just basic, kind of, not thinking of it as a business or as a growing a following. This is before like followers and likes and all that stuff. So that was what drove me to it originally, was kind of encouragement by my teammates and just the fact that I was saying the same things over and over to a bunch of guys.
Yeah, you started to get some really good press. It seems like relatively early on. I mean, I know you were putting out high quality content. You're actually working with photographers, which was much more rare back then versus now. Every Instagrammer has photographers they work with. But you got a lot of good press. And then was there a point where you thought, okay, maybe this could be a business, or maybe this is what I want to do after school?
It took a while. It took a while to get there. It was very much a passion project for a long time. At first, I wrote anonymously. Yeah, I didn't want to be. I guess I was a little shy, and it wasn't normal for a guy to be kind of taking fashion photos and putting them on the internet. So for me, it was all about like the information, you know. So I wrote for over a year, and those old articles are still available online somewhere. And didn't say who I was or anything like that. And then, I still grew a following. There was, we had a decent number of commenters and stuff, and they all requested to show what I was talking about. I would describe how to wear something and take like a stock photo, and people would say, "Hey, well, why can't you show us what it looks like?" So at some point, I took like a selfie in the mirror, and this is like a digital point and shoot camera selfie, old school style, and put that in one of my articles, and the comments went through the roof, and it was like my the biggest article I had written as far as eyeballs go. And that was kind of an aha moment where it's like, okay, well, if we're going to write original content, we should also shoot original content. So from there, it was like, I had my point and shoot camera. I would give it to my friends, and they would be my sort of quote unquote photographer. And that just, it grew and grew and grew. The photos were really shitty at first. And then I hired my first actual photographer, who was Jenny Lee Thornton. And she actually reached out to me because she was following the blog and said, "I love what you're doing, but your photos suck." And she was right. And, I'd love to kind of intern for you. So she was my first ever intern. And the minute she started, our site became like a whole different animal. It was very much more professional overnight.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't realize there was such a long period where you were doing purely written content without any original photography.
Well, to answer your original question, when did it become a business? And I sold ads pretty early, um, but in a very small scale. When we first started, it was great, actually. That might have been the most fun time, where we were just selling banner ads. You could write whatever you wanted in the article, and then the ads were on the side or on the top, and you got a couple cents every time the page loaded. And if you got a million page loads, you made a few grand, and it was awesome. You could do whatever you wanted. It was very freeing. Um, so that started small and grew organically, and then eventually that all changed. Like banner ads kind of went away, and it became sponsored content, and that was a shift that was like really difficult, because now all the freedom of like just writing whatever you wanted was now like, okay, you got to write this, you got to say this, you can't say this, you got to use this photo. So very early on, I realized like as the money was going up, the product was actually getting worse. So that was my first kind of feeling of like, okay, this business model, doesn't really make sense. It doesn't. The growth here is kind of like, it's eating itself up. Um, so that was the most. It went from being the best part to kind of the hardest part.
So were you doing all of this during your time in school? And then what did you think about you doing that in the future?
Yeah, the blog was always a side hustle. I was always doing something else. At first, I was in college and playing college basketball, and then for a very short period of time, I worked as a buyer at Saks Fifth Avenue. So my blog kind of followed my journey. So I would write about the buying experience and what it's like to be a buyer and market appointments and all that stuff. I didn't really like that, so then long story, fell into bespoke clothing. And then I kind of blogged about that. And then I went back to school to FIT for menswear design. So really the blog was sort of just like my chronicles as I was trying to learn as much as I could about menswear. So at one point I'm, working in the bespoke shop doing sales and measuring and fitting during the afternoon. In the morning, I'm at school learning menswear design. And then, at night, I'm writing articles and taking people's questions about what I just wrote, which is everything I was doing that day. So it was really kind of everything I was doing was kind of feeding itself. And that made it really easy to create kind of new content because it was new for me as well. Yeah, that was tough. We really wanted to get away from the word blogger at that time. I always thought what we were doing was not really blogging, because when blogs started to get popular, it was more of what you see on Instagram. which is like a guy taking an outfit photo, and it was more about that guy's outfit, whereas we were trying to like explain things about fabric and fit and bespoke versus ready to wear, and do something that has a little bit more information and is less about the person. So that was a period of time when I was almost embarrassed to say I was a blogger. I would tell people that and then be like, oh, well, so am I, and so is my mom. And I was just like, you know what, that's not really what we're doing. So TSB Men was obviously short form for The Style Blogger, which was a terrible name change because everyone would just say, well, what's TSB stand for? And I would just say The Style Blogger. So we'd be right back in square one. And it was a terrible name to say over the phone. I remember people being like, TBS, TS what? So that was probably a poor name change. And then when we rebranded to Articles of Style, that was probably a more positive name change, but still a name I don't think our whole team is completely satisfied with at the moment.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things is choosing the right name for your company, especially because you guys obviously you're a menswear company, and that's the business, but you're still producing really good content, and also, with your emails, figuring out how to reorganize and repurpose content that's already up. So it's definitely a multifaceted business you have.
Yeah, I wish we could do more content. The whole concept, even the name, right? It's a double entendre. It's meant to be both content and commerce. We're kind of in an awkward place now as a very young brand where, we're getting more orders than we can handle while we also produce content. We're a small team of four. And there's just a lot to do because every order comes with custom fittings and takes a fair amount of my time. So while I wish my day was like writing and doing photo shoots and that kind of stuff, most of my day right now is dealing with customers' patterns and fit questions in the factory. So our main goal right now is to scale our fulfillment to be able to make the fitting process a lot smoother and more efficient so that we can free up our team to do better content marketing. That's really the sweet spot for us. I think we're really good creative marketers as far as content goes, and once we get back to that, I think people will finally see what we've been working on for like 10 years.
So what was your path from the TSB rebranding and then becoming Articles of Style and starting to do your own clothing? Because that's a huge shift that we talked about earlier. You did that years before what people are doing now from Instagram. So I'd just love to hear a little bit of that.
Yeah, that was, like many huge shifts, it takes a big personal journey as well. I mean, for me, I was ready to give it up. It got to a point where I remember doing this sponsored post. I don't know, it was for Kenneth Cole or Calvin Klein or someone like that. And I just didn't want to do it. They were going to pay us like $5,000 or something to do this one piece 3 ways with one of their bags or something like that. And I got the bag in the mail, and it was just like, it was such a terrible bag. So I just couldn't do it. I couldn't hawk this product on our readers with a clean conscience. So I was like, you know what, I'm kind of done with this. I don't want to do this type of content anymore. And that was when, so basically moved from New York to LA just to like do something different, figure it out. I was kind of said, tell all of our sponsors and all these brands that are reaching out to us that we're out of the business. We're not doing that anymore. We're going to figure out what we're going to do next, and kind of just went to LA to like live in the mountains, and just kind of free my mind. And that was the only plan. And from that, there was a series of events that led to Articles of Style. So it wasn't really the plan in that sense. It was more just like, okay, I got to make a change here. We had this following, it was a good one, but we weren't delivering a value. It was like the more we just hawk these shitty products, the smaller and smaller our following is going to get, or at least the less impact our content's going to have on them, right? So through that, I met up with Pat Foley, who was our point guard in college and one of the smartest guys I knew. He was working at Google in San Francisco with Will Howe. And those guys were kind of feeling similar. They're like, we're working at Google. It's a cushy job. I could see the future here, but I want to make a move and I want to take a risk. So I got lucky and kind of was able to pick up two, 4.0 Ivy League cats to take what we had and transition into something else. So it kind of takes a lot of brain power to figure that one out. Um, and through that, I mean, a lot of what we were doing on the blog was reviewing products similar to what you guys do. So it was obvious because we had the advantage where I was working at Michael Andrews Bespoke, making these custom, designing my own suits essentially, and then shooting them for the blog. And then people were like, well, I want that suit. Where can I buy that suit? So we were already promoting a custom product that I was designing. And on top of that, we were reviewing every product we can get our hands on. So, I had done a dozen fittings with companies like Indochino or Black Lapel or those kind of brands, online custom. And it was always so disappointing. It was the aha moment was kind of like the in-person bespoke experience is so great and takes, makes it so easy on the customer, and they don't have to worry about anything, and they get a great service. But online, it's really bad. The quality of the garment's terrible. There's no service at all. You got to measure yourself. So I kind of had my eye on that space, trying to take what we do in person in the bespoke shop, especially from a service element, and applying that online to our following. So that kind of like whiff of an idea was there. And then when Will and Pat came on board, and we had many long brainstorm nights in LA where we kind of came up with the concept of the fitting and found the factory and all that good stuff.
And how did you either know about Southwick or connect with Southwick? Did you tour other factories? Why did you go Made in the USA? Do you want to hit on all of those in one answer?
Yeah, I mean, given what we wanted to do with the fitting garments, we were limited. It was challenging to find a factory that could deliver a try-on garment that was custom made at the price we needed in the timeline we needed. The concept was very kind of new and still is for people, in that we're doing something between made to measure and bespoke, and there's no measurements taken at all. So we had to kind of find a factory who believed in us and was, kind of believed in what we were trying to do. Because when you start something like that, it's going to take a lot of testing, and everyone's got to be on the same page. And what's the try-on garment look like? What's it made out of? How's it shipped? How long? All of that good stuff. So we had a few factories in mind. We tested a couple Chinese factories, and it logistically didn't make sense, and the garment wasn't where it needed to be. And we bumped into Southwick randomly at a trade show. As I often say in interviews, so much of the path is random chance and seeing opportunity and kind of pursuing it. So it's really hard to predict where you're going to go. It's more important to just like see what makes sense and follow that path. So we met them. I didn't know who Southwick was. We were getting paid by a trade show to do content to cover the show. I think it was Liberty Fairs or something like that. And, our booth was not far from theirs, and the guy at the booth had a cool suit on. So I was like, hey man, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I represent Southwick. And then that was kind of the beginning of that. And then, hundreds of samples later and lots of long meetings and all of that, and the kind of journey it was on.
That's very cool. Yeah, so much of that does become chance. I was surprised that you actually keep the fitting garments, and I've ended up wearing the pants from the fitting garment just as like an office outfit. I thought that was really interesting.
Good, man. Good. Yeah, I mean, the whole concept of articles of style clothing is ease for the customer, right? I mean, you can do the whole thing sitting on the toilet, and that was important to us. You don't have to measure yourself. You don't have to get anything. You don't have to do a body scan. You just answer a few questions. We make the try on. You never have to go to the post office. So all you really have to do is answer a few questions and take 4 photos, and we kind of do the rest. And that was kind of one of our core principles was how do you make this as easy as possible?
Yeah, you seem to have been able to build like a really awesome team, and I know you've talked a little bit about Will, and some of the guys that came on when you were starting Articles of Style when you moved out to LA. But You've had Alex and Wes on board for a while, or at least in your life for a while. So, any tips or advice for other entrepreneurs who are at the point where they want to build a team? How do you do that? How do you make sure you hire the right people, or partner with the right people?
Hmm. Man, it's a challenge. I mean, first and foremost, you really don't want to hire anyone unless you absolutely need to. Um, you learn that quickly because if there's something you can do yourself, you probably should until you can't do it anymore. So I did it kind of on my own for as long as I could, even while I had a job and while I was in school. And I was sometimes telling clients in the bespoke shop to, like, hold on a second and then go to the bathroom and take a conference call, and that was when I realized, okay, now I need some help. So first and foremost, I would make sure you need the help before you hire someone. Um, and then from there, it was, trying to find guys who, were passionate about what we're doing. That I think is most important. It's a very difficult thing to do, and there are long days, and there are, days when you feel like you're not going to make it through. And if guys don't believe in what you're trying to accomplish, then it's going to be a lot harder. So I'm blessed with guys who are fully committed, and they see the vision and they see the growth, and even when days are long and tough, they're enjoying the process. Um, so that's probably first. From there, it was guys that needed to be kind of multi-talented too. I mean, like you said, our business touches a lot of different things. We're a publisher. We have a photography department. We have our own custom tech. We have our own fitting process. We have factory relationships. So we're across a lot of different things with four guys. Customer service is his own animal, and just controlling the inbox. So every guy, when you look at our team, does a lot of different things. You look at a guy like Will or Wes, like they could be meeting with a client, showing them fabrics, taking measurements, doing investor calls, modeling the clothing, doing styling on the mannequins, hosting events, speaking on panels. These are guys that really can do. I can trust them to do just about anything, and that was critical. But all of this came out of a friendship first. I think these are, for me, it was all about fun. It was like, I don't want to. Yeah, I think I started this really because I didn't want to have a job. So when I was hiring, I was like, who are guys that I actually want to hang out with? All these guys are kind of like brothers, and that, again, that camaraderie makes it a lot easier to kind of push through harder times.
And on the financial side, like you mentioned, investor calls, is that part of the big picture? Is raising money, bringing in investors, or are you trying to keep it kind of in the family right now?
We're raising right now. We're looking to raise $1 million right now through angel investors. So that's a whole nother full-time job, which kind of sucks, to be honest. Um, we go back and forth. Will and I go back and forth. It's really a roller coaster ride. We're pretty much self-funded off the sales. So you can wake up one morning and you sold 10 suits that night, and you had a $15,000 sleep, and that feels great. And then you go 5 days without selling anything, and you're ready to pull your hair out. So it's very much an up and down feeling while you fund your whole business off the sales you're making. We've been able to do that, and we've been able to grow. So that's the good news. But in some ways too, it's a race. This is a very competitive space, and there's a lot of big money companies trying to be innovative in the space. So, for example, there's a long list of things on the tech side that we'd like to accomplish, and that would make our life a lot easier. For example, we're in a position now where we could automate the basted, the try-on garments, or at least almost automate the measurements of the try-on garments. So that would save me 20 minutes every order. That's a pretty intensive build, and it involves some data manipulation and measurement algorithm work. So that's going to take a significant amount of time on development. And Ben is our only developer, and he's the one who's really underwater. I got him working on front end stuff. I got him working on back end stuff, on database stuff, on measurement algorithm stuff. So we really need the help on the tech side. So if we could pour some money there, we could get further ahead a lot faster and get to that place where we want to be, where we're actually a content marketing company that also sells the products in our content, and the fulfillment of those products is getting closer and closer to automation.
That sounds like that'd be amazing.
Yeah, if I had $1 million today, I'd have a whole different set of problems. The problems wouldn't go away. It would just be bigger problems.
And is there anybody? Obviously, there's still a whole set of bespoke in-person only bespoke suit makers. There's a probably even larger set and growing set of online only made to measure. And you guys seem to be one of the only companies that's doing something in between. Is there anybody else?
There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, I think in some ways what we've seen, what's been interesting to me is that we have some clients who are coming up the scale. So they were shopping at J. Crew or Suit Supply, and they want something that's fits them a little better, is a little more quality. They can design it themselves, something unique. And then we also have guys who, that's usually a younger guy. That's a guy in kind of his late 20s or whatever. And then you got a guy, we also have the guy who's in his 50s, 60s, and he's been buying bespoke clothing or Savile Row made clothing. And, he's looking for something that's easier to purchase, a lower price point, but the same kind of like service and design. So it's interesting to hear comparisons from kind of both sides. That's been a huge advantage for us, being a blog and now being a brand, is we always have direct feedback from our readers and our customers. So it's a competitive space. I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is combine the sort of best parts of designer ready to wear with the best parts of like the service of bespoke, and wrap it all up in a package that is like the best parts of a good fashion magazine, which is virtually impossible to find today. So like the branding is really what it comes down to. I often say that there's no worse brands in fashion than custom clothers. So it's really a space that's wide open to take some of the cool factor you find in a brand like Gucci or YSL. Those are brands that are selling cool, they're selling design, and they're selling, garments, versus most of these players in the custom space are selling, a fit service and not really the garment itself.
Well, I think you also have the wind at your back in the shift of menswear overall. I think you are seeing younger guys getting more into suiting. There's still the streetwear, and there's still, people wearing their business casual.
Yeah, I wonder about that. I wonder about that a lot. In some ways, I feel like we're all living in our own bubbles these days. So when I go to my Instagram and I see everything is suiting, it's easy for me to be like, oh, suiting's on the rise. But then I go outside and I see, the lines for Supreme are 6 blocks long, and most people are wearing athleisure sweatpants and yoga pants, stuff like that. I'm like, is suiting really on the rise? So I think there's competing thoughts there. I think there is a growing.
It seems like men are caring more about their appearance in general. No matter what aesthetic they're into, it's just like kind of like you were saying, like it used to be cool not to care, now it's cool to care.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's trying to flex, with the Instagram, and people are taking photos of themselves more than ever. Whether or not they're dandies who are wearing bow ties and pocket squares, like Raphael in their flex, I think that's I don't know what the numbers are on that, but the guys who do love it, they're getting deeper and deeper, right? So you do have guys who are into tailoring and really into tailoring, and follow all these accounts and trying to learn everything they can. So I think there's a growing base of niche interests kind of across the board with what's happening with social.
Yeah, for sure. I think sky's the limit, because even if you just survey all men, just take American adult men, and most of them don't even know about custom. Even to us, it seems like companies like Indochino, for example, are just huge, but I think most guys still don't really know about made to measure or online custom, and the vast majority of guys have never or will never go bespoke. So I think there's you guys are obviously doing well so far, but I really think sky's the limit.
I hope so. I mean, a company like Indochino's a huge company, yeah, for sure. Um, but it's hard to say. I mean, the good news is we sell a product that is relatively timeless and that applies and appeals to just about any man. Guys might not love tailoring or like to be dandy, but they certainly need a good suit every once in a while. Everyone has a wedding or an interview or something of that nature. So even if it's not the guy who's wearing contrast vests with his three-piece suits, there is a very large number of guys who want that good suit, and it's been part of our culture for over 100 years, and it isn't really going anywhere, right? So there's always that sort of need in a guy's wardrobe.
Dan, something you mentioned in the interview with Raphael is that you were working on like big shifts and changes. Is there anything you can point to of what you've done in that time?
Always, man. Always big shifts and changes. Most of our big shifts currently are all internal. It's really the process now. We've gotten to the point where we're selling so many garments that if we can't make the process more efficient, we're just going to struggle. So most of that is internal tech at the moment. Big shifts that I see in the future for us is, like we've been talking about, is freeing up the core team from the necessary steps of fulfillment and being able to focus on content again, especially video content. I think there's, if it was up to me, we would be a production company, but that's kind of in due time.
Yeah, and all the technology companies are investing in video and they're promoting that. So I think you've got, sounds like you have a ton on your plate. Well, I would point.
There's a lot of things we want to do, it's like, the women's market, I think, is something that is wide open. So that's a whole, there's a lot of big picture stuff and people love to talk big picture, but unfortunately, currently I have to talk very small picture down to the eighth of an inch, you know what I mean? So I'm kind of drowning in that. Right? So it's hard to even plan the next kind of like 6 months.
Yeah, I definitely hear you there. Well, I would point people at Articles of Style, the website, but then also if you want to see Dan singing Leon Bridges in his car, check out Instagram and the Instagram stories. That song's been stuck in my head since you put that video up. So I really...
That song's on repeat around here all the time. You guys like the stories? Are you guys into the stories?
Yeah, I find that it's an interesting mix between, like, you'll see you behind the scenes, but then you'll put your actual content on there as well. To me, I always think of Instagram as kind of quicker content behind the scenes, a little bit like behind the peak, but then sometimes you'll have like a whole series of 15 photos showing your current collection, and I look at all of them, so I don't know how other people use Instagram.
Yeah, I think we're somewhat confused there, to be honest. We're throwing a lot of kind of spaghetti at the wall. Luckily, people are completely obsessed and addicted to Instagram, so they'll pretty much watch whatever has a blinking light on it that's new. I think we're struggling with kind of like, we do a lot of things on it. Like everyone in our team has control of the Instagram, and I'm always kind of encouraging those guys to share their perspective as well. But my view on that is just like, you have someone's attention, you should just put it right in front of them. I think it's funny when people like put a story that says, go to my feed for this photo again, and then you go to the feed and they say, go to my bio page for the link to this blog post, and then you go to the blog post and it's like all the same content, and I'm just like, well, you had me at the story, why don't you just give me what you wanted to give me in the first place?
Yeah, that's one that definitely drives me crazy, is when you have a story showing the feed and they block out the new photo, telling you to go to the new photo. That's
like, what's the point? Like, what's the point of that?
Yeah, I don't know. But like I liked a few weeks ago, Will shared a video from Russia showing like, hey, this is what I'm working on. I think that's the cool stuff. I know personally, I just like seeing the building and the process versus some other things. So, yeah, I would say check out the story.
Yeah, That's been another thing is like, some people are watching for the kind of the journey of the squad too, and I always that's been my philosophy is the more these guys know us and appreciate the journey, the more likely they are to become customers down the road.
Absolutely. So I would point people at the Instagram and the website. You can also see my video. I reviewed them after purchasing it and really like the process. And so good luck with your fundraising. Good luck with building out the team. Sounds like you know what you need to do. Now you're just working on the execution, and that's really cool.
Yeah, man. Head down, eyes forward.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the Button Up Podcast, and we'll talk to you soon, Dan. Thank you for listening to the Buttoned Up Podcast, a collaboration between John Shanahan of The Cavalier and Brock McGough of Modest Man, and we will see you next week.